Hey, what's up, guys? This is Pastor Dane Johansson from Agris Reformed Baptist Church in Gilbert, Arizona. Just making a follow-up video on learning Greek, New Testament Greek in particular. I'm titling this video as a plea for Greek admissions and language proficiency. So I did a video, like an hour-long video, about a month ago on different methods of learning ancient Greek, and so this is just kind of a follow-up. So first of all, we're going to want to kind of do some review of reasons for learning Greek. I want to look at some good reasons and some bad reasons. I would say the first reason you should learn Koine Greek or New Testament Greek or just any form of Greek, but especially for us who are Bible students or people interested in ancient Greek, but specifically Bible students, would be that you can read your Greek New Testament with a tear in the eye, meaning not a tear in the eye because of how difficult it is, but a tear in the eye because of the content is moving your soul and it's devotional. So I say that's number one. We want to be able to read this, sit down and read it as our daily Bible, and not a translation. Although translations can be good and helpful, we want to read it as God gave it, and that's been my goal since I started learning Greek, was to be able to read the Greek New Testament, to be able to benefit from it as God gave it in the inspired, God-breathed form that He chose to use. I would say second reason for learning Greek and becoming proficient in it is to understand the translations that we have better, whether that's the English versions or the French versions or whatever your native tongue is to be able to truly understand the accuracy of them. For instance, in the English language, the Standard English Bible that has been used for hundreds and hundreds of years is the Authorized Version, also known as the King James Version of the Bible. That's pretty much the standard. You still look at Pew polls, and of all the modern translations, everything that's out, still the King James is the most read translation. Maybe not the most purchased. I think the NIV is the most purchased, followed by the King James, and underneath that I think the ESV now. But of all the Bibles that are actually read, those Pew polls, and I'll try to find a link and put it underneath, it's been a while since I read it, is still the King James Version of the Bible. So that is the most widely read English New Testament, or English translation of the Bible. So another reason for learning New Testament Greek is to understand the accuracy of the translation that you use in your language, and how those translators, those scholars, those men who worked on these things understood the language and brought it into our language in a colloquial, idiomatic, and sometimes literal form from the Greek into the English. And of course, a lot of these, I would say probably all of these reasons apply to Hebrew as well. I think the third reason for learning New Testament Greek would be simply to learn a foreign language. For me, I'm very interested in languages. I always have been ever since I became a Christian, started learning New Testament Greek. It's been a passion of mine to learn languages, and I've messed around in Dutch and German, and I know a decent amount of Latin. Just starting to work on my Latin again, making it a little bit better. But I just like foreign languages. It's a hobby of mine. I enjoy it. And there's a lot of people that do that. There's a lot of polyglots out there that just learn languages just for the fun of it, being able to speak to other people, understand cultures. And a lot of people just love the process of learning a language, and I'm one of those people. So having messed around a little bit in Spanish, obviously I live here in Arizona, so I've grown up not only taking Spanish classes in school, but also everywhere I go, signs are bilingual, English and Spanish, and the people who work here and live here, a lot of them speak only Spanish or speak it bilingually. So you hear Spanish everywhere you go, you see Spanish everywhere you go. So foreign languages are interesting to me. They always have been. And when I started studying more of the German liberal theology, I wanted to learn German. I learned a little bit of German. Same for when I started reading Dutch Reformed guys. I want to know Dutch. So I have the Dutch Statenvertaling translation of the Bible. I have Herman Bavinck, his entire Gereformeerde Dogmatiek in Dutch. I wish I could read it fluently, but I can't. So that's something I hopefully will get to. But also I learned Latin so I could read Turretin and Calvin and all these other things in Latin. Richard Sibbes, some other Puritans, wrote works just in Latin. John Owen has an entire volume 17 of his works, that is entirely in Latin. So just with learning a foreign language is great, being able to speak with people, being able to understand the text and the culture in which their language is used and written in. That's another great reason for learning New Testament Greek. I say some bad reasons. There's many bad reasons to learn a foreign language. Bad motives, I would say, with New Testament Greek in particular, Koine Greek, would be to get some kind of deeper meaning out of the Greek. Let me just tell you this. If you're learning New Testament Greek, whatever translation you use, whether you use a modern translation from the critical text or you use the King James, New King James, etc., from the received text of the scriptures, you're not going to get a deeper meaning out of the Greek. It's not like a special magical language. It's simply a language that people spoke every day, and what you have on your page in English is what it means in Greek for the most part, if you have an accurate translation. So you want to know what this means? Read your King James Bible. If you have a critical edition, read your NASB, your ESV. For the most part, it's going to say exactly what this says. So you're not reading it to get some secret, Gnostic, deeper meaning that you can't get out of English or French or Italian or Spanish or whatever you have an accurate Bible translation in. You're not going to get some secret meaning that God didn't give, or that he only gave in Greek, and only Greek speakers can understand it, and no one has spoken the kind of Greek that has been around since the first century in Judea, and it's a mystical thing. So that's a bad reason for learning Greek, is to try to get some secret, more deeper meaning out of your Greek New Testament than you're going to get in your English Bible. So I would say that's a bad reason. Number two is to try to correct the Bible. You have tons of these guys in seminaries that come out, and pastors that haven't even been in seminary, who just always want to correct. Well, the English Bible here says, but what it really means in the Greek. When you hear that, just turn off your ears. They're lying. They have no idea what they're talking about. It doesn't really say anything different in the Greek New Testament than it does in the English. Anyone who speaks two languages or knows both of these languages knows that that is completely false, that when it says have in the Greek and you have in the English translation, there it is. The word means have. The text says have, and you're not going to get something secret out of it in the Greek, and so there's no point in correcting the English translations of the Bible that your people are using, especially if you're a preacher or if you're in a small group. Maybe you're a small group leader. Stop going back to the Greek. Stop trying to impress people, especially if you don't know this book to a decent proficiency and maybe even fluently. You have no business trying to correct the Greek anyway. The next thing I would advocate for is proficiency. So we've covered reasons to learn Greek, good reasons, bad reasons. The next part I would like to look at is proficiency in the language. I would say the first thing we need to do as New Testament students, of students of New Testament Greek, is ditch this fake, never before used, before the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s, fake, artificial pronunciation of the Greek called Erasmian. Erasmus himself did not use the Erasmian pronunciation. He did it as an intellectual exercise of what the Greek language may have sounded like in the 6th century BC. So we're talking 700, 600 years later. New Testament Greek would have sounded completely different. New Testament Greek sounded almost exactly like it does in modern Greek today. When they spoke New Testament Greek, Koine Greek, the language of the people, it sounded almost completely identical to New Testament or to modern Greek. There's a few vowel shifts, but those are so minor that it doesn't really even affect anything or matter. We can tell this from the manuscript evidence that we have, how they misspelled stuff all the time and would use an eta for an iota and diphthongs that would equal that same sound. So the first thing we need to do is ditch this Erasmian. No one has ever sounded this way. There's no evidence that any Greek person has ever pronounced the Greek language, either modern or ancient, or Koine or early modern, ever before that way. So it's a fake thing. It's made up. It's clumsy. It's difficult. It leads to a lack of being able to read quickly and swiftly and fluently. And I don't think there's any good reason to retain it. Proficiency, I would say the second part. So first, get rid of Erasmian. Use the modern Greek. I know there's the Randall Booth reconstructed pronunciation that's supposed to reflect exactly the way it was pronounced in New Testament times, and I think it does reflect that exactly. But again, no one speaks that way now, so why speak it that way? For instance, in the time of the King James Bible, they pronounced English slightly differently than we do now. The vowels and all those kinds of things had different sounds. Does that mean that when we read our King James Bible, if you read the King James Bible, you should read it with that pronunciation? No, no one does that. There's some Shakespeare plays that are done in that pronunciation, so you get a lot of the innuendos and the play on words that Shakespeare did, but there's no reason to do that as a modern English speaker when reading an early modern translation of the Bible, the King James Bible. We don't do that. So why would we do that when we go to Greek, which then it was also pronounced almost exactly like it is now? So ditch the Erasmian. Secondly, realize that seminaries do not teach you to be proficient. I just had a conversation with a brother the other day, and I said, what level of proficiency are they taking you to? There's a very standardized way of talking about proficiency in a language. It's called the Common European Form of Reference, the CEFR. So if you go and look into that, they have levels of proficiency. And even in English, the word proficiency, we don't have to do a word study there. Proficient means proficient. What level of proficiency are they taking in the language, I asked. And this brother, who's a friend of mine, he said, well, it depends what you mean by proficient. No, it doesn't matter depends what I mean by proficient. Proficient means proficient. Are you proficient in the language? Are they taking you to a proficiency in New Testament Greek so you can read the language? You can't redefine proficiency, and the fact that seminaries are doing this, and having myself taken 2 years of seminary Greek, I can tell you myself, they don't take you to a proficiency in the language. In the CEFR proficiency standard levels, there are A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, and C2. Those are the different levels of proficiency in a foreign language. In A1, you basically understand some very basic phrases, how to ask for water. Basically, C1 is where I'm in modern Greek, at least as far as I can produce modern Greek. I can ask "Ta ήθελα ένα μπουκάλι νερό," I would like a glass of water. I can ask, "Καταλαβαίνετε τα αγγλικά," do you understand English? Δεν μιλάω πολύ λίγο ελληνικά, I don't speak much Greek. Those kinds of things. That's an A1 proficiency. You know how to look things up in a dictionary. You can kind of get around. However, I would probably say that my ability to understand modern Greek is more of like an A2 level. But A1 is very basic, understands phrases, have a 1,000-word vocabulary probably, just able to get around. A2 would be more of an elementary understanding. So A1 is a beginning level. A2 is an elementary level, meaning, you can take part in an array of some basic conversations, not just asking what somebody's name is, telling them what your name is, your age, where you're from, asking and ordering in a restaurant. That's all A1. A2 elementary level would be, be able to take part in a few different conversations, tell more about yourself, interests, and understand other people's interests. B1 would be intermediate, be able to basically just take that one step further. Most people who come to a foreign language, that we consider, they're fluent in this language, they're usually in between a B1 and a B2. And B1 is, you can take part in multiple conversations, some more metaphysical things, not just like where do you live, all that kind of stuff, but, kind of people's interests, and be able to navigate most conversations. B2, you're doing good. You're navigating pretty much every conversation. And except for, specialized jargon, you're not going to sit down and talk about Greek politics probably. You'll be able to follow and kind of interject here and there, but most likely, specific little intricacies of people's jobs or philosophy or politics or whatever, you're going to be a little bit lost. However, you'll be, able to track and follow. You just won't be able to partake too much. C1 would be advanced. C1 is somebody who's like totally fluent, a native level speaker. And again, extreme specialized jargon and stuff, you're not going to understand, but you'll be able to figure it out by context and ask. And C2 is, you could basically teach the language at a high level. in that language. You wouldn't have to resort to your native tongue. C2, say if I was C2 in Greek, I can understand pretty much everything I read, everything I hear. I could communicate in anything I want. I can get my point across in any conversation, any topic, and even be able to teach, people in Greece who are Greek, their own language, to a high level. That's C2. So that's the standard level of proficiency. So when you say, well, it depends what you mean by fluency or proficiency, that's what we mean by proficiency. And let me just tell you this, even up till Greek 3 and 4, I bet the case probably is they couldn't even pass an A1 test. Not that there is one in Koine, but if there was one in Koine Greek, they would not be able to pass it. They don't take you to any kind of level. They teach you how to use tools, they teach you how to do exegesis, sentence diagramming, talk about tense forms, talk about word studies, things like that. All that stuff's fine and useful, but it's not proficiency in the language. So if you're going to be the one defining, redefining, and butchering the meaning of the word proficiency in English, literally all of Europe is against you and already has a proficiency standard. Maybe they'll take you to an A1 level. But most people, even the guys who teach Greek and write these grammars in Greek, couldn't even ask, what is your name? How are you? Hello? Goodbye. Daniel Streett did an amazing job demonstrating this. He gave a test to Greek professors and doctoral level New Testament Greek students, and they failed. The average score was 0.4. He gave 10 basic words, not even sentences, basic words, and then 2 bonus questions that were hello, how are you, and goodbye. And the highest score out of anyone in that room, there was 35 people, was 2 out of 10. So that's pretty sad. And we're talking about the word yes is on there, the word cold, the word nose, the word jump, the word red, all that kind of stuff. Very basic stuff. The word for the number 9, enea, that was on there, and the results were devastating. So you need to ditch Erasmian and understand that seminaries don't teach you proficiency. What they do teach you might be very good, but if you want to read the Greek New Testament or reach any level of proficiency in this and be able to read it daily as your Bible that you pray over, that you learn from, that you grow in your faith from, you're going to have to do a whole lot more and supplement a ton, just like you would in any language, what they're teaching you. And that's fine. But if you want to reach a level of proficiency, if you come out after passing all 4 years of Greek in seminary, you still won't know Greek. And that's just the way it is. And I think it needs to be changed. Last part of proficiency, I would say learn modern Greek. And this will flow into my last point. But learn modern Greek. Modern Greek speakers understand New Testament Greek. For my whole life, I've been told that they can't understand modern Greek. Or they can't understand, a modern Greek speaker cannot understand Koine Greek. They can't understand the New Testament. They can't pick up a UBS, a Nestle Aland, a TR, and read it and understand it. It's too hard for them. It's basically like us trying to pick up Beowulf. Even though Beowulf is English, we can't understand it. It's a completely different thing. And I've heard this my whole life. Usually I think the thing is happening is they're confusing ancient Greek with Koine Greek. Koine Greek is not really ancient Greek. Ancient Greek is Homer. Yes, that is true that modern Greek speakers, unless they study specifically Homer, are going to recognize words, but they're not going to understand what's being said. It's still their language, of course, but it's poetry. It's completely different syntax, grammar, words, and the words mean different things. They'll recognize stuff, but they're not going to have any idea what's going on. That's true for Homeric Greek, which was 7th century, 8th century, and 9th century BC. We're talking about something that's almost 1,000 years closer to that, which is the New Testament in Greek. And even after that, Greek has stayed extremely conservative. Up until the 70s, the Greek people used in all their written media something called katharevousa, which means like pure. The katharevousa language basically is Koine, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. It's pretty much the same. So the fact that they could understand that means they can understand Koine Greek, New Testament Greek. And so even recently I had somebody tell me who's a top-rate scholar in New Testament, they told me, yeah, I've done the same. I've done that. I've read or had them read. I'm confused as to what exactly happened, but either he read it aloud to them, or he had them, pick up his UBS and read it, and they didn't understand it. I think what probably was going on is he was using the Erasmian. No one understands Erasmian because it's not a real way of pronouncing Greek. It's a fake, made-up, useless way of pronouncing Greek. Use not only modern Greek pronunciation, but learn modern Greek. The reason you learn modern Greek is because, and I'm talking about learn it simultaneously with the intricacies of Koine grammar. Of course, you're going to need a little bit of something to help you understand Koine grammar, the intricacies of it, and even the way some of the words are used. So it's not identical, but the people I just spent a week in Cyprus, or no, 2 weeks in Cyprus, and we won people to Christ just from this Bible right here, the TR, Koine Greek. We literally showed it to them, we read it to them, and because they spoke English, we'd ask them what it meant. They'd tell us what it meant, and we preached the gospel to them from this book. It was an amazing experience, and so they understand it perfectly fine. We did this with about 100 people, and even people from Bulgaria and Romania that we ran into in Cyprus that live in Cyprus now, teenagers, 14 and 16 were the two. They understood Koine Greek just fine, even though they had learned modern Greek as probably a second or third or fourth language, and only been speaking modern Greek for about 4 years. But still, they understood it just fine because modern Greek and Koine Greek are so similar. Also in Greece and in Cyprus, in the high schools, you study a couple years of Homeric Greek, Attic Greek, Koine Greek, Byzantine Greek, and the Katharevousa. So modern Greeks understand it. So if you learn modern Greek alongside, you'll be able to see Greek as a language, not as a Sudoku puzzle. You'll be able to grow in your vocabulary. Probably 90%, if not more, of what is in Duolingo's tree is in the New Testament, in some form or another. I was just reading this morning Matthew 3, and there's a word in there, prepo, which I need, or it is necessary for me to do in modern Greek. They don't decline that word anymore. They just use the third person singular present active indicative, prepi. And so prepi always in a sentence means I need to do something. So you could say, ego prepi na fao, I need to eat. And you would just use that without changing it ever. You would never say prepo, you would just say prepi for everything. It's a verb, meaning it's necessary to do something. It's kind of like an auxiliary verb. So learn modern Greek. It'll give you tons of the grammar that you need to know, tons of the vocabulary you need to know. It'll help you see Greek as a living language. It'll help you to see something, see it as something that people use and speak. 14 million Greek speakers on planet Earth right now. Last point in this video would be missions. The Greek people are in desperate need of missionaries. And we have thousands of these seminary students and pastors that are training and spending 4 or 5 years learning Greek and coming out basically proficient. But they could, if you can sound it out in modern Greek, you could go over there, because most of them speak English. You can go over there, read them the Greek New Testament, use their own book and show it to them, and read from it to them and win them to Christ with it. They are in darkness. Pretty much everyone we talked to, the main demographic we were looking at that was the most receptive to the gospel was about ages 14 to 30, but mostly even 17 to 25 was the main people that were receptive and came to Christ that we spoke to. Males, so young boys and young men who were lied to by the Greek Orthodox Church. That's a work salvation. It's basically Catholicism. There's there's idolatry. There's all this stuff, and pretty much all of them told us. We asked them, if you died today, do you know where you'd go, heaven or hell, stin kolisa, or to paradiso, to paradise, to heaven, and they all said, yeah, we're going to hell. I'm not a good person. I'm not a good enough person. I don't do enough church things. I don't do enough things that can earn me heaven. And so that's the standard idea behind their religion, their theology. So if a few hundred Greek students from these seminaries, if you guys would take your Greek Bible, take your Greek New Testament, learn how to pronounce it like a modern Greek speaker does so they can understand it, because if you use the Erasmian, they don't understand it. I read one guy a passage from Mark, and I just said, I used the Erasmian, because I've learned all of the different ones. And so I used Erasmian to read it to him, and then we asked him, what language do you think that is? And he said, like an American Indian, like Samoan. And we were like, no, not at all. But then we read it to him using the modern Greek pronunciation. He understood every word of it. So right there, I mean, we talked to hundreds of people, probably a little bit over 100 people, and read them the Greek New Testament and had them read the Greek New Testament for us. We had a guy who was 18, a friend there, a believer. He's been a Christian a couple of years, like an actual Bible-believing evangelical Christian, and we sat him down. He'd never read. He was using the King James Bible in English because that's, he listens to a lot of preaching and stuff online, and he'd never read the Greek New Testament before, not even the Katharevousa translation. He had only ever used English, and so we had him read 5 chapters of Revelation. He understood every word of it, and you'll see that in the documentary that we're coming out with soon on this. So take your Greek New Testament, take your UBS, your NA 28, your TR, whatever it is, and go over there, read it to them in the modern pronunciation so they can understand it, and win them to Christ with it. They're in desperate need, and they are ripe for the picking in Cyprus, in Albania, and in Greece, where they speak Greek. So guys, let me show you, a lot of people are wondering here, well, if I learn modern Greek, I'm kind of sketched out about this theory. I don't really know if I believe you, Dane, that modern Greeks can understand it, or that learning modern Greek would help my Koine studies. Let me just show you this. I'm going to read from the Greek New Testament in John 1:1-3, and then I'll read it for you in the Katharevousa, which is the Vamvas translation done in the 1800s. The Katharevousa is what they used up till the 70s, right? So when they wanted to read a modern Bible, they read this. And then I'll read you from the Dimotiki, which is the language of the spoken language in the streets of Cyprus and Athens today. And they have a translation in Dimotiki, and I'll read it from you, and you can see just how, quote unquote, different of a language it is. So let's flip open to John chapter 1, and I'll just read them and kind of give some explanation to show you. So if you have one, you can turn open with me. This is Evangelion to kata Ioannin, the Gospel according to John, and this is verse 1 of the Gospel of John. En archi είναι ο λόγος, και ο λόγος είναι προς τον Θεόν, και Θεός είναι ο λόγος. Ούτως είναι εν αρχή προς τον Θεόν. Πάντα δι' αυτού γένετο, και χωρίς αυτού γένετο ουδέν ο γέγονεν. So that's the original inspired Greek right there, as we all read it, because that's the same even whether you're using TR, UBS, whatever you're using, it's the same right there. Let me, right here in the Katharevousa, flip open for you to Kata Ioannin, Kephalionen. I'll read you the first 3 verses. En archi ito o logos, και ο λόγος ito παρά το Θεό, και Θεός ito ο λόγος. Ούτως ito εν αρχή παρά το Θεό. Πάντα δι' αυτού έγινεν, και χωρίς αυτού δεν έγινεν ουδέν το οποίον έγινεν. Now, if you have learned Koine Greek and you understand John 1:1-3, you understand every word of what I just read. Even though maybe you've never heard it that way, and it's a couple of these words like ito. Ito is in. It's the past tense of ina, to be. Past tense of imi, I am, esti. And esti is the present tense version of in. So ito in the beginning was the word, and the word was para to Theo, with God. Ke theos ito o logos. So it's almost completely identical here. I think there's one word somebody might not know, probably to pion egine. And even then, a form of that does appear in the New Testament. Now here's the Dimotiki. So we just did Koine, and then we did Katharevousa. Now here's the Dimotiki, which, let me tell you this too, Greeks don't really read the Bible, and when they do, they use the TR, because that's just what they have in their churches and stuff, or the Katharevousa. They don't even really use this, but it is available. People have translated in the 90s into Dimotiki. Now here's the Dimotiki. Stin archi itan o logos. One difference you'll see is they don't have the dative in modern Greek. they just use the accusative or the genitive. They don't have the dative. So even in the katharevusa, they had the dative, as you saw, para to theo. That's in the dative. Now here, stin just means in, so it's their form of the word en. Stin archi itan o logos, ke o logos itan pros ton theo. So you see instead of to theo, it's ton theo. So the accusative. Ke theos itan o logos. Aftos iten stin archi pros ton theo. He, they're the same, was in the beginning with God. Same thing. Aftos itan stin archi pros ton theo. Ola, which means you'll understand this in the Erasmian if you've learned New Testament Greek. Halos, so whole. Ola eginan, so the third person plural ending on. Ola eginan diamesu aftu, so created through him. Ke choris afton then egine ute ena to opio echi gine. So this is somewhat different, but even then you see tons of the words. And the most important thing is, we as New Testament Greek learners will have a little bit of struggle with this. However, the modern Greeks will have no struggle with it. I was there for 2 weeks, talking to Greeks every day, hearing Greek every day, ordering in Greek in restaurants, speaking with Greek people, speaking with teenagers, young teenagers with a cigarette hanging out of their lip at the skate park, and they understood it. So this language, the demotiki, is completely intelligible to us if we just put in a little bit of effort, and you don't have to put in much. And then if you learn it, you'll understand even more of the Koine. So again, just as a recap, we looked at reasons for learning Greek. We looked at reasons not to learn Greek, bad reasons. We looked at proficiency and missions. So I implore you all to learn modern Greek, at least learn how to pronounce it with the modern Greek pronunciation. Start listening to it, start making it something you want to get proficient in. And not your definition of proficient, but the real definition of proficient, meaning proficient. So thanks guys for tuning in and watching this. I hope it was helpful. God bless.